I'd like to call to order the Middletown City Council meeting for Tuesday, August 15th, 2023. We could start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Meterspaw?
Here.
Mayor Condrey?
Here.
Mr. Farrell?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Moon?
Okay, first we have this evening's citizen comments, and we have one citizen comment from our illustrious state rep, Mr. Thomas Hall. If you'd like to come up to the dais, state your name and address for the record for us.
Perfect. I know I only have 4 minutes, so I'll be very brief. My name is Thomas Hall, 6364 Trenton Franklin Road, Middletown, Ohio. Good evening, Council. I wanted to come to you tonight to talk about the budget, talk about some of the hot button issues we've been talking about in Columbus over the last few months. I want to first start off with like a budget recap because there were so many good things that did happen in our 2-year state operating budget that gets passed every 2 years. This presentation usually takes about 35 minutes, so I am going to talk really fast, but I want to leave time for questions if the members of the council have questions. So what we did with, starting off with income tax, we did a $3.17 billion income tax for the state of Ohio. Nice haircut, Rodney. We took Ohio to 2 tax brackets, 3 if you count the 0 to 26,000. When I started in the legislature, we were at 9, so we've taken it down to 2 tax brackets on our way to try and getting rid of the state's income tax. That is something that me and our senator are working on right now to look at phasing out. As far as the CAT tax, 85% of businesses in the state of Ohio will no longer have to pay a CAT tax. That was a huge win for the state of Ohio. Education, the House fought for public education, the Senate fought for EdChoice. We did both, using the fiscal year 2022 inputs to fund public education, but also expanding EdChoice in the state of Ohio. As far as economic development, Intel, Ford, Honda, Amazon, a lot of these companies you see coming to the state of Ohio, they came because we set up a fund in 2021 called a Mega Projects Fund through the state operating budget. We did that again in this budget. This is called the All Ohio Future Fund. It's run through the Department of Development. There's $750 million allocated for growth and development from all across the state. We also fought for Councilman Farrell for $500 million for the brownfield remediation, the land bank money again. That was a huge successful program that we found, hoping that Butler County kind of uses some of those funds going forward as well and setting up a program for that as well. The state overall, we are doing really well financially as far as revenues go. Every time we meet with Office of Budget Management, they tell us how great the state is doing because of the investments that are being made in our state, so much so that we put another $600 million into our rainy day account, making it $4 billion. So the state is doing really well. Selfishly, my bills, we've introduced 9 bills, 8 of which have had 3 hearings at least, with 4 of them getting passed, 3 already into law because they were added into the budget. One thing I did want to talk about more than anything else is our House Bill 187. Thank you to Vice Mayor Thomas and Mayor Condrey for a letter of support and coming to testify. We have been fighting the tax commissioner ever since we found out about the large increase that our county is going to be receiving. We are one of 13 counties up for that triennial update as we speak. We had tried working with the tax commissioner to no avail. After they won the lawsuit in 2020 against our former county auditor, they feel like they are very empowered to do whatever they want at this point. So we introduced a bill to use 3 years worth of data or one, whatever benefits the taxpayer. We also wanted to give the county auditors more say in that. We tried to stick this into the budget. When we were when we were on the last hour of the last day, it got pulled from the budget. Unfortunately, Senator Lang and I are still going to be working on this when we come back. I have assurance that we will pass out a committee when we get back in the next few weeks. Now working on our speaker, who is not a favorite of this, to get it out of the House to get it over to the Senate. So more to come on that. Last few seconds, I want to talk about capital budget real super quick because it has a huge effect on the city of Middletown. Our capital budget is drastically different this year. We used to have $160 to $170 million to split with the Senate. That is bonded. That means you can only spend it on certain things. This capital budget, we will have $350 million in cash to spend with less restrictions. So guidance will be coming out. I'll be working with City Manager Paul Lally, who thank you for fitting me in tonight, on that guidance, which will come out. It will be due by the end of January. So those projects will be due. But $350 million, Liberty's already asking for the money. Monroe's asking for the money, but I want to fight for you guys just as much as I'm fighting for them because this is a historic amount of money that's never been on the table before. Be happy to take any questions and apologize for going over.
Thank you. Let me know when you want to come in the future. We're happy to put you in a little more formally than citizen comments.
We have tried, I think, Paul, 3 or 4 times? We've tried a few times to make it work, and it's unfortunately not worked.
I know you have other stuff on.
Vice Mayor understands my dilemma with leaving Ways and Means Committee at 4:30, 5 o'clock on Tuesdays.
It's tough to get
not
back
being
in
able to
time.
get back in time. So.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and great news about capital budget.
Yes. Any question? Yeah.
So
I mean, it's kind of a different situation than citizen
we'll roll
comment.
with
I have no problem.
So we've stacked $600 million into the general fund for Ohio to go up to $4 billion. Is that in the last year, or is that since you've been in office?
The $600 million is just from this budget.
Okay, the last 2 years?
The last 6 months, really.
Okay.
What we wanted to do also, just briefly, there was an attempt, and I know Councilman Moon and I have talked about this. We got as close as ever to getting the local government fund back to normal levels. That was cut, obviously, under Governor Kasich. We had about 35 votes in the House to do that. That's something I think we can do in the next budget, is to restore some of those funds back to the local governments that got cut. But the state of Ohio, the leadership in the House and Senate have been very steadfast in making sure that we're putting back a lot of money in the case of something happening. But with the historic investments we're seeing in the last year and a half, 2 years in our state, not just Intel, it's a huge influx of businesses that are choosing Ohio. That's why we're having all these record-setting revenues, coupled with the lowest unemployment in the state's history. So the state of Ohio is doing phenomenal as an economic source right now.
And you may not know the answer to this, but what's the operating budget for the state of Ohio for a month right now?
Roughly, I can just say based on the 2-year operating budget, it's roughly around $86 billion.
Per month?
No, per 2 years.
So
that's
we
the
have
operating budget.
25 years, essentially, of spending money in the bank right now?
We have a very large considerable amount of spending money, yes.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
That is why I think that the state has chosen to be a little bit more proactive in spending some of these monies. And one thing I saw, I think it was in an article.
I'm wrong on that number, aren't I? That's 2.5 years. Oh, okay, I was close. I forgot a zero.
Well, one thing I do want to make certain, sometimes the city of Middletown, when you go through these grant processes through the state, please let us know. There's been so many times that I've heard that, whether it's adding for police or adding for different public works, please let us know. I mean, a lot of times I don't even know that you guys are going after these things. And it doesn't hurt for us to just make a call or try and, work with the team to understand why it didn't get selected or why it did get selected. A lot of the projects downtown Middletown with the historic tax credits, we were able to work with the Department of Development to get them for downtown Middletown for some of the developers. So as long as I'm in the loop on kind of what you guys are wanting to go after, we will be happy to help or fight or call or anything because you guys are a huge part, if not one of actually is the biggest part of our district, with Liberty Township being second. But we want to be able to help and get those monies back to our district. So that's what we're continuing to fight for. There's, again, so many other things I could talk about, but I just want to be cognizant of you guys' time.
Thomas, I know this is before you got in office, so this is not toward you, but we have asked for police and fire help for decades and never got it from the state. I can tell you, we wrote letters, we had meetings. This is before you, so I'll just make that clear.
Oh, no.
And fell on deaf ears, and it was always, we'll work with you when we can, work with you can, and never got anything. So we have tried that. I don't know if Paul was in those meetings. I know I was in there with the city manager and the two previous city managers before Palaniuk, and we got nowhere with them. And so, especially during the opioid mess, and they said, well, money's coming, and it never came. So I think that's why right now there's probably not asked, but since you're saying that, maybe in the future we'll use that.
Look,
As the state helps since Thomas is here,
and I apologize for the extra time.
Well,
thank
we're
you.
in council comments section now.
yeah.
Thank you. I sincerely believe that the times are different now,
Okay.
and I hope that what I'm telling you is true.
Okay.
From the governor's team all the way down. There's been times where the governor's team and we've been on the same page. We've really worked together well. There's been times on these 187 where they were against it.
Okay.
But for me, it's about just giving our district, giving Middletown the best shot.
Okay.
And as long as I know that you guys are putting in for something, or as long as I know that something's coming, I'm not saying that I need to know every little detail going on. But if there's a specific ask as far as like more cops or more firemen, I'd be happy to look at every rock.
Yeah.
Whether it's the state fire marshal, whether it's Director Wilson, who we're going to be having down at the end of September, which I'll send an invite to all the members of council from Department of Public Safety. We feel like we're in a really good position to work with these people. Okay. And if we get an answer of no, I want to know why it's a no. I don't want to just say, oh, it's no.
Yeah, I think the why is important.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if there's anything the state can do about staffing for everybody, because everybody talks police and fire, but I know our public works is just hurting for people. And they're to me, they're part of public safety, the work they do out there. So those are kind of things I would love for staff, maybe you run it through the mayor, run it through the city manager, and kind of see where we can go with that in the future. Maybe you can help, but I love saying why we can't do something instead of just, we'll get back with you and we never hear back.
And the state historically has never been in such a position that we are in now with the historic investments.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying, with the $4 billion we have in our rainy day fund, now is the time to really look at our calculated spending of what we're doing in the state and make those reforms. We talk about property tax, income tax reform. Now is the time to really do it, because we have this historic investment to go back on. But for me, it's always been about just getting stuff done for the district. And that's why I mentioned we have 3 things already signed into law this term. We had 5 in our first term. For me, it's about coming back to you and saying, hey, we got this done, or hey, we're working on this. And I think right now, with Senator Lang, myself, even Representative Creech, and some of the other reps we have that are huge public safety, we can surely get a lot more progress done. I don't make any promises on anything, but I really want to make sure that I can be an ally as much as I can. But I got to know. I got to know what's going on. I got to know, where the ask is coming from. I rode with Officer Mooney probably about a month ago, and he, more cops, and you hear that sentiment everywhere. So I think there is things I can do better on as far as working with the council and making sure we're advocating more on some of the things you guys are asking for.
Thank you.
Paul, do we have any active grants that
So fortunately, what I can say is that the fire department has just recently learned in the last week that we're the recipient of a first responders grant from the state of Ohio for the retention of firefighters. So we received $300,000, a little bit more than $300,000 to pay for the salary of firefighters.
That's great to hear.
I did know about that, not because I'm a fireman, because I talked to state fire marshal the other day.
Awesome. That's great.
Is that a one-time award, Paul, or
Yes.
is that, okay?
Yes.
And the governor's team and the Department of Development, who we will be having the director down as well in the coming months, they have set up kind of a program for the state of Ohio to make sure that all Ohio is getting in touch with some of these funds that we're seeing. So we obviously want all the funds to be spent here in Butler County in our district, but the reality is that's not the case in most situations. So all we can do is ask and get an answer, and if we don't get the right answer, understand why, and go back to the drawing board and come back with a better proposal going forward.
So Thomas, fact checking myself, that's 4 years of reserves. I can't do math apparently. But anyways, I see what, like, for example, Adam Matthews, and who's the state rep for Mason, Lebanon, that area. So I saw what he was able to do with the state of Ohio and getting a bunch of money to hopefully keep the tennis tournament, which is going on right now in Mason. So he got, I don't know, it was like, let's say, give or take $30 million to try to keep that tournament there. So what are you seeing across the state right now that state representatives are able to get done for the, like, what's our best ask, in your opinion, that we can make to try to get money for our area?
So capital budget or budget?
Either one.
Either one.
How can we set you up for success?
So capital budget, as soon as we get the guidance, we're going to send it out. And I don't know what the guidance is going to look like, but it is historic because it's $350 million for us and $350 million for the Senate. So if we don't get it, you can go.
So it's more than doubled than what we've done previously.
It's like 3 or 4 times more, yeah.
Okay.
So capital budget, I got to wait to see what the guidance is on that. But once we get the guidance, I'll have a better understanding of what the state's looking for. So what happens with the capital budget? Some of you have been through the capital budget before. Councilman Moon has been very helpful in capital budget requests before. My jurisdictions will submit a list of things that are important to them. I recommend always 3 to 5 things. The more local and the more county input on projects, the more that they are graded better at the state. I will take these to our budget director, our budget chairman, finance chairman, and go over my list of things from the district. And then we'll find out, hopefully by the end of May, what gets awarded and what doesn't. Sometimes they get awarded fully, 100%, sometimes they don't. Going back to Representative Matthews, so Representative Matthews worked with Senator Wilson over in Warren County to try and keep the tennis tournament. That's why we put it into the operating budget and not the capital budget. That would typically go for a capital budget suggestion more so than an operating budget. But this was a different operating budget. There's a lot of politics going on in the State House right now with the Speaker of the House. And that's a whole nother story of his priorities and what happened on January 3rd of this year in the Ohio House. But there was a lot of earmarks put into the operating budget in the House. We did not put any earmarks in because as soon as those earmarks got to the Senate, they were dead. The Senate would not stand for earmarks. So the Senate and House kind of went back and forth for a number of weeks. Senate's version and the House's version had, I think, over 500 differences between them, which was a huge amount, more so than anybody's seen in the past. So going forward, I think if we can, look at the capital budget, maybe sit down and say, hey, these will fly or these won't fly at the state level. Looking at the grants, I think the grants are a huge opportunity for us right now because there's so much of them and there's so many different resources out there from the state level. And then long term, I think it's looking at possible legislation like we're looking at right now with property taxes. And these property taxes haven't been reformed in 20-25 years. We are constantly trying to look at different ideas to help the property tax owner, but at the same time we're running into a lot of walls because the old guard, and in this fight we fought the County Auditor Association, we fought the school districts, we fought the governor's team. It was like every turn we took we were fighting somebody else, but we'll continue to fight for that because it's important for our district with property taxes. But at the same time I think that right now, again, the state is doing really well financially. And as much as I like to see the 270 loop succeeding around Columbus, I want that investment down here in Butler County. We've been very successful in Monroe and Trenton and even Liberty Township, but I want that investment to go all over Butler County. And that's what we'll continue to look at. So I hope that kind of answered your question. Capital budget is probably priority A, and the grants will be priority B at this point.
Thomas, I had a couple quick things.
Absolutely, yeah.
One that I think we have talked about this in the past, but it might have been a while, and we're a little further along now with an agreement with Wayland Ventures, who is a historic building developer that is looking at our downtown area. So just as a heads up, I do anticipate if their pre-development kind of due diligence goes well, that we'll look at applying for historic tax credits for Manchester and Sunshine buildings. Those would be the first ones that would come up. Manchester lost its because of a lack of movement, but it did have them at one point, and so it now doesn't. So that could
And
be something
and
we.
To that very point, Director of Development, her name is Lydia Mahalik. She is one of the nicest, best people to work with in the state of Ohio. She and her team are very cognizant of the Butler County area. We have been in her ear since day one. Now that there's $750 million towards the All Ohio Futures Fund, we are really in her ear for not only the historic tax credits, but for the Milliken Road interchange that we're trying to get done in Liberty Township. So there are so many different things that we're looking at. I bring that up because she's going to be coming to our county in the next month and a half. And I encourage you to share those same sentiments with her because she's very personal. She will remember. She does not forget things.
Okay, great. I'll do that. The other thing is, obviously, statewide issue. The homelessness situation is everywhere. It has a lot of reasons for it. But one thing that I have been talking to a lot of people about statewide is that we did, as a state, we got rid of the psych wards, right? That and it seems as though in many cases we have a lot of these individuals who would have otherwise been in some sort of a facility that would help them along because they just aren't capable mentally of living and in society in a reasonable way. I say this because I think that they're kind of ending up all over the place. And now a lot of people who want help, we're finding ways to get them into treatment eventually, right? But there's still the underlying individuals who just are maybe never capable of doing that. So from a state perspective, if there is any ability to have a discussion about a program that, I'm not saying the state needs to open up psych wards again,
Right.
but if there's funding where we can help create some wings at private hospitals or anything like that, where it's just to keep Ohio from becoming what has occurred in other states so that we continue to attract investment and people who want to live here while also taking care of and having compassion, of course, for those who are not capable.
Absolutely. And I think that, the council has, Councilman Meterspaw, I've met with Councilman Farrell and members of the county and state and federal level. I think that there is a growing consensus of, and I don't want to speak for other people, to do something. For us, it's about, well, what is that something? I talked to Representative Phil Palmer, who represents Montgomery County, is former Montgomery County Sheriff. You know Phil. We just don't understand, I guess, what the long-term solution is yet. And we've yet to figure that out. We've talked about different scenarios, but as a state government, besides funding a new hospital, what are the long-term solutions that we can enact that have, a lot of members, I'll be very blunt with you guys, a lot of members do not want to throw money towards this way. They would rather look at, some of the things that causes people to go into homelessness. They don't want to look at the people once they're into the homelessness issue. So it's been a fight in Columbus because nobody is on the same page of what a long-term solution is. If there's anything that we are missing at the state level, please let us know. I know that we have talked. The council has talked about this issue for a long time, and I would be happy to, if there is legislation or if it is a budget item, if it's a capital budget item, if it's a grant. I want to be on the same page as you guys. I don't want to be out there talking about, well, we want to do this, and then Councilman Moon's like, that's the worst idea ever. That won't solve anything. I want to be united in this because I think it is an important issue. I just don't know what that long-term fix is.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, that's why I just referenced that because it is something that I've heard from a lot of people it's a thought that people have about what could be done possibly from a state level. The other thing is Middletown has, historically cared a lot more than it seems some other communities. Not that they aren't caring, but we've done more, I should say. And we're kind of tired of doing the more, and it's fallen on the city level. And I'm sure you've heard that. But I would say that's, if there's funds up, at the state level, maybe it's time we come together about this issue and try to do something. What that something is, again. None.
And I think you and I were at there was a homelessness discussion at Miami Middletown well, it might have been years ago, that you were at and attended, and I asked the same people. I was like, well, what's our short-term goals here? What's our long-term goals? And a lot of people are, well, we got to talk about it first. And talking about it is good, but sitting down and actually coming up with a short list of your short-term or long-term. I mean, we are all committed and doing something. It's just, what is that something? Because I can't stress this enough. I don't want to do anything that you guys don't agree is a good idea or is going to work. We want to make sure that we are doing things as your state representative and getting things done. And that's why I highlight the bills we've gotten done. That's why I highlight the success we've had with the budget. A lot of things in the budget I was very happy with. I was pissed off about the House Bill 187, but we got a lot of other good things in there, and we'll continue to fight for property taxes, because that's a fight that's going to take more than a year. It's going to take 6 to 8 years over the next few legislature sessions.
Well, I concur with the mayor on that. Middletown has done more than anybody around us, and I don't care who gets ticked off, because it's true. I've seen it for years, and I've seen people dumped here because we have Hope House and Shalom, and Middletown's always done whatever they can, and throwing more money at it is not always the solution, because we've thrown, what was it that you calculated, how many millions over the years?
I mean, it was,
You've thrown at this
if
problem?
you count the paperboard factory, we're in for $3.5 million
Yeah.
because of homelessness in the last few years. I broke it down to a number basically for the amount of homeless people we have. We've spent like $12,000 a homeless person.
And the problem is it needs to be addressed, and it's the elephant in the room, is a lot of these service points around us, these access points, they're making bank
Oh, I
on this.
agree.
It's a business.
It is a business.
And when you tell them that, they get upset because it's true. Because if homeless are there, or they're doing therapy, or whatever they're doing, they get paid off grants or federal or state money for having them there. So you see these same people back for 3 or 4 years. I think of one right now who's always in our police lobby. 3 or 4 years in a row, they're getting money every time he comes in there and gets treatment.
It's taxpayer funded too.
It's taxpayer funded, so it's a business, and you guys know that. I'm not telling you nothing, but
No, you're 100% right.
yeah.
We do
So
have an upcoming meeting about it in a
Like in 2
week or
weeks.
two,
Oh, good.
local.
good.
So Ben, is it Taylor?
Yes.
Yeah, so he and I did a deep dive into sort of, to your point, Mayor, these psych wards, for lack of a better term, that got shut down whenever they were early 90s, that don't exist. What are people doing now? So Ben, I'll give Ben the credit, who works for Warren Davidson.
Yeah.
He did a deep dive into this, and Dade County right now, which is in Miami, Florida, they are doing a first of its kind mental health hospital at a large scale. Nobody else has ever tried to do this, but they see it as such an issue that they're investing, honestly, hundreds of millions of dollars into it. But their counter argument is, we're spending so much money in our, once again, citizen funded, this is also going to create jobs. But in concurrence with that, you then have to start passing legislation, anti-homeless legislation. If you're on the street, we're going to arrest you for being here. So you can't sort of have one without the other, is kind of some of the things that, if I'm not mistaken, what they've said. It creates jobs, but what comes with it? So, and if we're the only person doing it, it all comes here, and that's, or whoever would do it.
Right.
But it will be interesting to watch and see what they do, because I didn't know about this until recently, and see how they handle it over the next couple of years, because they're leaders in this, and we'll just see how it ends up for them.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing Miami has better than us is year-round weather.
A beach.
A beach and the climate. So winters up here are hard, and let's not beat around that bush or talk about that, because with Middletown, you guys have led the charge and done the most, and you have had to with the freezing winters and the cold times people have to undergo being homeless in the winter up here. So I think any option is on the table. I don't want to any idea kind of discard it, because at this point I don't think anybody's ever really looked at it and said, okay, we're going to establish a long-term funding program for this, or we're going to establish a short-term funding program. I can give you one quick example. When I fought the railroads in 2021, all we wanted was them not to block the crossings, and we wanted to establish a reporting method. For 2 years, all we heard was how bad the railroads were. They didn't care. East Palestine happens, and now we have a fund in the operating budget to fund block crossings and to fund safety for some of these crossings in Ohio. So it can be done, no matter how many times people tell you, no, it's impossible. You know, we started fighting the railroads because of St. Clair Township, a small rural township in Butler County. And here we are today actually establishing $100 million towards funding rail safety in the state of Ohio. So I think that whether it's railroads, whether it's homelessness, you know, some of these huge issues that nobody knows the long-term solution for, we got to start somewhere. And that somewhere is where I'm excited to meet people. I'm excited to put things on a whiteboard like we do in our office and get to work.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone for your patience too, taking a little
Yes,
more
sorry,
time,
sorry.
but it's important to have discussions with our.
I could go another hour, I promise.
For the record, you said nice haircut. This is not a new haircut. The windows were down, and I have like a $6 haircut, so this is what you get. So it's not new. It's not special.
Your wife's a special lady, and
Thank you, Tom.
I pray for her almost daily.
You should.
Dealing with
It's rough.
this. But no, I
Thank
thank
you
you
for
for the
joining
time. I
us.
apologize for the longevity of this. Due to Ways and Means Committee meeting at 2, 3, 4 o'clock, we don't get out of Columbus till 6 o'clock on Tuesdays, so I can't make it to council. So apologize for that.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. You guys have a great night.
And I apologize to Representative Hall. He had asked to come to speak in the city manager's report, but we thought we had a relatively lengthy presentation from Butler County RTA, but it lately got postponed to September 5th, so I apologize.
It all worked
Okay.
out.
Yeah, you took their time, so I appreciate it, and I apologize.
Thank you. Well, we've kind of delved into council comments, so we'll continue in that realm. Mr. Farrell, do you have anything this evening?
No council comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
Just one brief comment from our park board meeting last night. The clean sweep of the Great Miami, organized by the Keep Middletown Beautiful organization, is happening on Saturday, September 16th from 9 a.m. to noon. They'll be meeting at the River Center on Carmody. You can register online at greatmiamirivercleanup.org. They love to have community groups or even just individuals who have the afternoon, want to bring the kids down and do some cleanup. We would very much appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Moon.
No comments this evening.
Mr. Mueller-Spa.
Just real quick, if we're still getting like emails and messages about Central Connections, please, if you're watching this, contact the city manager's office or the police department. For those, we're not privy to the investigation on council, nor should we be. So please contact them, because all we do is forward that to the proper people. Thank you.
And I used all my comments on Rep Hall, so I'm good. That brings us next to city manager reports. Mr. Lawley.
I have nothing this evening.
All right. And like that, we're at the consent agenda. Ms. Skank, will you please present that for us?
For consideration this evening, we have the approval of the city council minutes from August the 24th and September 6th, 2022. To receive and file the Historic Commission minutes from April the 20th and May 18th, 2023. The Airport Commission from May the 15th, 2023. And the Board of Health from July 11th, 2023. To confirm the appointments of Penny Fletcher to the position of Senior Account Clerk in the Department of Finance, Division of Sewer Administration. Adrian Ramsey to the position of Water Treatment Operator in the Department of Public Works and Utilities, Division of Water Treatment. Ashley Combs to the position of Assistant City Manager in the City Manager's Office, and Deborah Wells to the position of Development Services Director in the Development Services Department, and to receive and file a Resolution 23-06-00950 of the Board of County Commissioners of Butler County, Ohio, approving the expedited Type 2 annexation of 93.429 acres in Lemon Township to the City of Middletown.
I would move that the matters listed under the consent agenda be considered routine and enacted by one motion and one vote of consent.
Second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mueller-Spa.
Yes.
On the motion agenda, we have to authorize the city manager to submit a petition to city council to initiate a new community authority in accordance with Chapter 349 of the Ohio Revised Code.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
No comments?
Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Item B is to authorize the city manager to enter into a development agreement with SBD Market Avenue LLC related to the Atticus residential development near the intersection of Union Road and Market Avenue.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Any comments? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Mr. Farrell.
Yes.
Item C is to authorize the city manager to enter into a lease agreement with the Middletown Area Senior Citizens Incorporated for the real property at 3907 Central Avenue with the option to purchase the same upon further approval of city council.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Comments?
Council, once again, I apologize for the late addition of this motion agenda item for the Central Connections and the senior citizens. It came upon us very quickly this afternoon to reach agreement to, and this tonight is simply for us to give the city manager authorization to sign a lease with the executive board of the Senior Citizen Center. We need this to be able to continue operations. The rest of the week, we're kind of operating in a gray area. If we don't do this, then we're probably going to have to look at closing the doors until we can get a lease agreement in place. For full disclosure, this lease is for $50 a month from now till December 31st. And it actually, the agreement then will come forward to you in the purchase part of this, where we will look at purchasing the facility and the grounds for $1.8 million.
I have questions, and I apologize, and I didn't want to be rude and try to read when we had presenters, but I have not read this yet.
Yep.
I mean, I'm trying to read it as we're going, since we got it late. So please bear with me, I have a few questions.
Right.
And then, so
Yep.
this is basically $200 as the lease agreement till the end of December. At the end of December, that gives us 3 months to try to work a deal to buy this property. Is that correct?
We've got the deal. They've agreed to sell it to us for $1.8 million. So between now and December 31st, we hope to close on
Who
the deal.
assumes if there's the liability if something happens on that property in the next month, if there's a death or an accident?
So they are insured until August 31st of 2023. So until the end of this month.
That's covered.
So at that point, we're going to have to further refine the agreement on this, on the insurance. The bottom line is they don't have any money to insure the building or the grounds further.
Okay.
So with Brody and Ben and Austin, we're going to have to look further into, before we sign the agreement,
Okay.
what that is going to look like going forward. I'd say
So-
we're going to have to pay for it.
Okay. So the last question I have, and if you guys can answer, if we don't do this tonight, if we don't vote yes, there's a chance, are their seniors going to lose their services?
Yes.
And that's a
I mean,
fact.
yes. I mean, because
When
we
say
can't
services,
continue.
what do we mean? Can we clarify?
So we won't be able to continue what we're doing there now. The mission critical services of doing the medical appointments, doctor's appointments, and keeping the lights on at the facility. So some of those programs can continue that are going on, such as some of the exercise programs. Like, for example, today Premier's in there doing health checks today. Yoga classes. We're trying to keep the lights on for those things to continue. But if we don't get the lease agreement, then we can't continue having staff over there. For example, Jackie Phillips, our health director, and Jerry Lewis are there, have been there all week and are there kind of keeping things running and going. We've retained 3 of their staff members to help out, but then they've recruited 10 volunteers to work to keep some of the programs going.
And I think those are, I'm sorry, and I think these questions are important because, like I said, I haven't
Yeah,
read them.
absolutely.
So I wanted to make sure, but if, that's a big difference to me if they're going to lose services.
That is correct.
So right now with Jackie and Jerry, their staff, it's been working, how's it been
There are
working?
3 staff, some of the executive board members, and like I said, they have Jackie and Jerry have recruited 10 volunteers. They're not doing anything because we have them going through background checks today.
Good.
And once we clear them through the background checks, then we can start operating the facility as the leasee is running the place, so we can keep mission critical services going and the lights on so other programs can be done.
And our attorneys obviously drafted this lease.
Yeah, we've, it's gone back and forth a couple of times with the Central Connections attorney. And as Paul said, the language here, we tried to reach the framework of like the material terms of this agreement. There'll still be some wordsmithing through the document you have in front of you. It's the most recent version we sent to them. But we heard, I think it was around 2 o'clock today, that they were willing to accept the 1.8 million because we were very far apart for a long time.
That's why this came in so late.
That's exactly right. We heard from them. They didn't get back to us over the weekend. And then so we heard from them late yesterday again.
Of course they didn't.
This morning, and then we heard back around 2 o'clock this afternoon, and that's why you guys got it when you did.
Okay. Thank you.
And Paul, during the break in between our meetings, I had asked you, just for transparency for everyone else, about the item number 7, existing contracts, and what exactly that means. What existing contracts are we looking at, and how does that relate to some of the in-debt contracts that the previous operator?
Yeah, the contracts, like all the food stuff, is shut down. So there's no contracts we're obligated for there. The only contracts, once we sign the lease, will be things such as the mowing of the grass, some contracts with some of the exercise, the yoga, I think seniors, sneakers, to continue that. But we've had a lot of people step up to offer their assistance to help keep the cost down in the operation of activities.
And those services are not ones that come with previous debt from the
That is
prior
correct.
operation? Okay. I just want to make sure that that's clear, that we're not assuming any debt
Yeah.
that they incurred before we stepped in.
And even the language right now makes sure that up until we were to assume the contract or the services being provided, we wouldn't be responsible for anything up to the point that we actually do that. So it would kind of alleviate the concern that you guys have as it relates to, we don't know what debt's out there. And that's a concern.
And it's unfortunate. I mean, as a small business owner myself, I know that that puts other small businesses in a position of having that debt outstanding, but we also can't move forward necessarily in a responsible way by assuming that, so.
Just a general direction question. When, assuming this goes through and we purchase the property, when will the city or staff be able to say to the public, hey, all these folks have booked events over the next 6, 8, 12 months, weddings, anniversaries, reunions, that, hey, these things can go on, or these things cannot go on? Do we have any idea when we might be able to have those conversations?
I'd say between now and December 31st, we hope to be getting a better handle on that, and that may be able to resume after the first of the year.
Okay, thank you.
But we can't make any guarantees for anything that
No,
was
we-
booked
and we're not.
there in the next 3
This
months.
week, Jackie and Jerry are going through the itineraries they have, the bookings they have. We've essentially shut all that stuff down. Like, for example, the police department was supposed to have their Butler County Police Chief meeting there this Thursday, and for now, we've shut all those types of things down.
Okay.
In true Middletown style, after the last special meeting, we had, I'm sure you all have received these as well in city staff, but offers have been pouring in from various entities to, run programming, also to host a lot of the programming, which I really am grateful for our community to step up to that. It also reminds me that when we talked about our special meeting, there are two separate issues we're talking about here. One is the future of the physical building and property itself. The other is the programming. And I feel like the leasing of the space is addressing the programming piece. And so my question is, we have all of this outpouring of support in the community. Can we not move the programming somewhere else so that we don't end up in a situation with this lease that gives us any liability, and we can do a thorough assessment, before considering to purchase something where we can host all these things, mission critical things don't stop. Maybe it's just not at Central Connections.
I mean, that's a thought. The situation is our seniors, they want to be there at the Senior Citizen Center. This is where they're used to going. This is where they want to be. This is where they feel most comfortable at. And then, it's the easiest thing is for us to do it there. And I mean, I think we're going to be paying insurance costs anyway, so I'm not so sure there's too much of a concern as far as.
How many users are currently using those services?
I don't have that number right now with me.
And
I don't want to, I'm afraid to guess, but I can tell you this, during the day, the parking lot is packed.
What are the utility costs per month of the facility?
Yeah, about 5,000, let me see here. Yeah, about 5,500 a month in utility
And how much
costs.
maintenance and repair are they spending per month? I'm just looking at all the
So
things that we're
that's
committing
what
to
we're
in the
trying
lease.
to, Neil, our facilities manager here, is going over there with Jackie. They have a meeting there, I believe, tomorrow, and they're going to start getting a handle on the maintenance costs. We do have some staff in our housekeeping that we will be sending over to do some of the house cleaning maintenance, so we'll be able to save some money there. They won't be going there every day. Once again, Jackie and Neil are going to try to get a good handle this week on how much that will take.
How much is the insurance that we're agreeing to maintain?
The insurance was about $2,200 a month.
I think it's in that range.
Yeah, somewhere around $2,200.
Okay, and where's Exhibit A of the lease?
That I don't know.
I do not know. I did not. I know it has been exchanged at some point, but I know it wasn't on the last email exchange from them. So I don't have a copy of that.
Oh, excuse me. On the insurance, about $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month. I apologize. I looked down at the wrong number.
So 5,000 in utilities, 5,000 in insurance, unknown maintenance costs, $50 in rent. There's so many free places around town that people have offered up that I just have a hard time engaging in. Also a lease that just still has a lot of unknowns that we got an hour before, which I understand. We're working on fast things here. I don't have enough information to feel comfortable with this. Also, not even knowing how many seniors we're serving there right now. I understand it may be busy. I feel like there's another solution to make all of this happen and to help our seniors without incurring possible liabilities there's so many unknowns associated with this building and Central Connections, and there's just a lot of unanswered questions about it, and I feel uncomfortable. Now, I haven't even read the whole thing. Those are just questions I have on the first page and a half that I haven't gotten to the rest of it.
Paul, help me understand a little bit. This lease agreement, I would imagine, is critical to the continuation of the purchase agreement that we are trying to come to, and something that we've discussed as a result of the.
Yes, absolutely.
Overwhelmingly, our citizens have paid through their tax levy to purchase, to build and purchase this building. I think that's the investment that we've talked about protecting by purchasing this property. And I personally see the lease agreement as something that is a conduit to purchasing the building, which is the end result that we had all discussed previously.
That is correct.
So this,
And
this 3 or 4 month lease agreement basically gives us that timeline to finalize stuff.
Yes.
And to review everything we
And to
need
keep the
The
lights on
purchase.
and have one place for seniors to go and congregate and get the services they need.
And the one thing is, I'm not going to disagree or argue, and I totally understand where the mayor's coming from. I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, because this is a mess. We know it's a mess, but we didn't create the mess, and one or person on our board created the mess. But so I understand what she's saying. She's not wrong, because this is crazy. My only thing is trying to get all these seniors to different places around the city, 8 or 9 different places, would be a logistical nightmare, because I know most of them don't have transportation. And I'm just saying most of them, and that's because I think of my grandmothers. They don't have transportation. My mom doesn't have transportation. She's 80. I pick her up and take her to the doctor. I take her everywhere. So if we're trying to get them different places, that's the only logistical thing I can think that would be difficult.
Right.
Yeah, although the argument is that the parking lot is full.
Yeah,
and
I'm
that's
not
full,
arg-
so
I'm
then
not
it's like,
arguing with
well,
you.
they
I-
can get some.
yeah.
I mean, I know. I just.
It's hard, and
Yeah.
I just know, and maybe it's my emotions on this, but I know this has been there for 70 years, and these seniors, and we'll be seniors one day, and you closer than I will, but we're getting there. And my point is having that place where they can go and be comfortable. And I see both sides of it, but if this is a temporary thing for 3 months, and it's going to cost us a little bit, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Helping our seniors,
My concern is more the potential liability that I feel like we just don't have the answers on yet. Like, when we say it's a mess,
it is.
I'm concerned that the
What-
city inherits the mess and we don't know what we just inherited. I know we're doing our best from a legal perspective, but
What
It makes me
potential
anxious.
I'm just
Can't
curious,
argue it.
what potential liability are we looking at as far as if there's something wrong with the building? If somebody falls in a silver sneakers class and breaks their hip? I'm just curious.
well, there's also this taxes issue, and I don't know where that could take us, but it says, the lesser shall be liable for the payment of all taxes. Well, we know they're not paying taxes.
Right.
So,
Standard
well, are they
language
just
or
gonna, is
you
somebody
wanna-
gonna come seize the building tomorrow? I mean, I think they may owe to the IRS money. Is the IRS gonna come?
Wasn't that built into the,
But Brody,
of the
how
purchase
does that work
agreement?
with us?
So I'll try to answer all of these at once as best I can. So I would say typical in any sort of, if it were to get to a sale, for example, right? So this building is either going to be foreclosed upon or sold, ultimately. And any proceeds from that would be responsible, they would go to the various lien holders, which could be the county or the state or the city if tax liens in that regard. So I think that's what, when we include it's generic language on the taxes that the lessor is responsible for them. It's basically that we're not on the hook for the 4-month period that we're going to be in the building for that.
Sure, yeah.
So, I think to Zach's question, Councilman Farrell, what potential liability is there? I think there is, with any city-owned property or city-occupied property, there's a risk. That's why we have an insurance policy. That's why we pay the insurance policy.
If we're getting titles owner policy on this, which I imagine we would, is that correct?
Yeah,
So that protects us for future mechanical liens that are filed there. So
Right.
that's the insurance on the insurance.
Sure. And so what I would say, I think, is, two things to the conversation. One, this is not obligating you to purchase this. The instructions that we took from the special meeting were that, move quick and try to get this property, right? And do what we could. So the purchase price was going to be negotiated at some point. It was our belief, along with city staff's consultation, that it was better to do it now than get in there and then try to sort it out in 3 or 4 months at the end of the year. We think you got a pretty good deal on the appraisal. The appraisal, I think, was over $2.5 million. And so we have come in at, $750,000 less than that. So that's the first thing I would say is we are not obligated to do this. This is to get you into the building to continue to provide these services, in a need where, we have been told, and I think Paul reiterated tonight that, if this lease isn't executed, then the lights are going to be turned off. So that was priority number one, is finding a way to get into this building to continue to provide the services. The second thing is the obligation is not obligating you to do it. It gives you an option. The option solely rests with you. There will be due diligence completed before any sort of purchase. We will take, title work, anything and everything that would go into a normal property purchase. It will come back to you guys before that ever happens, because the money has not been appropriated yet. So those are the two important things that I would say. And I think I've tried to answer the questions, but if I haven't, please, let me know, and I'm happy to clarify.
Last thing I'll say is I do understand all sides of it, and I'll still have to sit down and read this, but it's like right now with our seniors, and most of them are on fixed incomes, and so inflation's up, it's ridiculous. Groceries are up, medicine's up, everything's up. Property taxes, we're getting ready to get killed on that here in Middletown for people on a fixed income. And now because of a board or a director's greed or whatever you want to call it, now we're going to take away the centrally located place where seniors can go and be with their friends, get health checks, take classes, eat lunch, and that's not going to be there. And I guess that's how I look at it pragmatically, is that's just, it's not fair. And I know life's not fair, and I know it's
But
going to, we
there's
have to
no
really look
food.
at this, but that's how I look at it as a person and as a community member.
Yeah, let me add this, that while we inherited a mess, day by day, we are stabilizing the situation at the Central Connections Senior Citizens Center. We are getting things organized. I think if you talk to a lot of the users of the facility, they are very happy with the city stepping in, taking things over. Once again, we are getting it stabilized and trying to get it to where they're not seeing a big difference in the delivery of those services. The main thing that you're not seeing is lunch and dinner being served outside of those contracts they had to keep. And then, once again, the lights being left on, the mission critical services being continued, and hopefully with this, they will be continued, for at least the next 3 months and beyond.
And just one more thing, if I may. Again, although you have a agreement in front of you, it is just a draft. So once you have a chance to look at it, you would be voting to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with Central Connections. We can tweak this, maybe not substantively not, change material terms of it, but if there are changes that you think that we haven't addressed or that we should address, please feel free to contact us afterwards.
Yeah, and I think
we can do that.
earlier, Councilman Moon had some discussion with Mr. Yoder, and he offered some suggestions in the insurance end of it, which Mr. Yoder was very appreciative of, and what we'll work on tomorrow.
Brody, how long reasonably is it going to take to close this property, in your opinion?
So I think they have they being Central Connections has motivation to do it quickly. We obviously, I think we can do it by the end of the year. That's aggressive, but I think that we can do our due diligence, do all the title work and the closing documents, and if you present a purchase and sale agreement to you all, really as quickly as you guys want to exercise the option. So I think realistically, you could probably do it in 30 to 45 days if you chose to do it right now. I'm not saying that you can or should. I think there's a lot more details that, once you're in the building, you want to find out.
So if we can close in 30 days, 45 days, I guess the whole argument of moving services, is it really worth it for $10,000, $12,000, $14,000? And we talk about liability. If we're going to leave a property vacant that everybody in the city, everybody in the area knows is vacant, what's the liability of? We all know what happens when properties sit vacant, whether it's Middletown or no matter what city it is. So I guess to displace people to another area than to bring them back in 30 or 45 days, I'd rather get this to the closing table as quickly as possible, assume the few expenses we're going to have, and keep this thing on track of where we're going right now.
Yeah, and let me tell you this, that the end game is to get this facility up and running, to have somebody else operating the center, and the city step out. That's the end game. Hopefully, we can accomplish that at some point in 2024.
But we still want to own the property in the end?
Well, that remains to be seen. I don't think we really do. If we could come to some type of an agreement where somebody else assumes that and operates the facility, and that would be the end game for the city, yes.
I would agree with that. If we can get it off the books with some type of clawback revision or something to where they have
Correct.
to report to us monthly.
Absolutely, and that's a very good point. There will be some type of, and I think the mayor talked about that last week. At the end of the day, there's going to be agreements going forward that we prevent something like what's happening in the future.
And that's not to say, because if we're leasing it to someone, because it's, in my opinion, it's going to be hard to get somebody to take this over. But you look at, I believe it happened in Westchester maybe 4 or 5 years ago, to where their nonprofit or whatever it was just walked out of the building. to where we may have to, once again, take control of this building.
Yeah.
And it's a reason, I mean, it's not out of the question.
It's amazing, though, the number of organizations that have stepped up and expressed interest in doing
Really
that.
is.
We're going to have to properly vet all that, and that'll take a while to vet those organizations out.
Is there a chance I'm just trying to think of all the options, but of the community center being a centralized location where we could provide these services to our seniors in the interim?
It was a thought, but I don't know if that's a realistic.
Is the community center even, I mean, do they have the space and capacity to even take on all of the projects?
I don't know that we would have the space and capacity to do all that and serve our senior citizens.
Oh, right, because we don't know how many are going.
Well, I'm not going to vote for,
Yeah.
I'm ready for the vote. So.
Thing about the community center, I mean, it's got great options, it's just really small. So I don't really know how many people would go from Central Connections, but it's really small. I was in there a few weeks ago again, and there's no, other than the main room where the stage is, and they serve food in the gym.
Right.
There's not much. I don't know if it's worth looking into, or it is small.
So Mayor, what's the motivation behind trying to move services?
I'm just concerned. I feel like the facility is like this, it's something I kind of want to keep an arm's distance from until we get more answers. There's so many unanswered things about what has occurred there, where our liabilities even could potentially lie. I mean, I don't even know how many people are using the facility right now, which is, that's tough. That's a tough one. I'm not sure how we don't kind of have some idea about that. What I want to know is if we don't do the lease, it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't still have the option to purchase it, though, right? Does that take that off the table? I don't.
Does it just mean that we are unable to serve those citizens that we're currently serving there? I mean,
No,
turn
well,
the lights off means turn the lights off.
No, I'm saying we serve them. We need to serve. Well, we don't need to. I want to make sure we continue serving them. I'm just talking about, are there other places we can do? There's so many people who've offered that up. Why does the city?
So the liability behind if somebody were to get hurt there. So if we're moving that argument to the community center, that's also city-owned. So I don't know that makes it, I don't know, Brody, does that even make a difference?
I mean, if they're getting injured or something were to happen
It's on the city either way.
yeah, it's going to be.
Mind you, this is all processing in my brain right now because I had no idea this was even coming before us today until an hour before this meeting. So I didn't even know that there was going to be a thing. Like, I'm still trying to think this through. I've had a lot of citizens very upset with the fact that we've even considered purchasing the property. Now, I don't think it's a bad route that, to go purchasing the property, but I'm just trying to process everything, and it's tough to do in the moment, and with compassion and logic and financial reasoning and all of that. So I don't fault anybody for the thoughts that they're having or expressing right now, and I want to have the good discussions, but I also want to make sure that the public recognizes we had I'm still here trying to read the darn lease. So
I'm reading it. If it was like a 6-month or 9-month lease, I would maybe think differently. This is not very long lease at all, but I still would want to read it, so I appreciate if you guys tweak it to get it to as soon as possible. And I understand why, but, to me, the services, I just don't know if logistically we can move people around, or if they can move people around. I just want to be fair to the seniors.
I know, but because it still gets back to we don't have a scope of mission.
I don't want
And that's why-
to see these people kicked out, I guess, and that's.
I'm totally with you. Don't get me wrong on that
Well,
one.
so-
No, it's
all
not
the-
an argument, it's a healthy
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah,
It's not.
I guess from my perspective, Paul, Jackie, Jerry, you all have spent a couple weeks now trying to transfer services there. And let's say we have a 5-week closing period, so 35 days. Okay, so then we spend 2 or 3 weeks transferring service to the community center, for example. And then we close on the property, and then we got to move the services back. And we go back and forth and back and forth. At what point is this thing do we just bite the bullet and move this forward? I guess that's, in the grand scheme of a $1.8 million purchase, we're sitting here fighting over $5,000 or $10,000.
It's not the money. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns on the money too.
But I don't
Just trying to figure
understand
out
that.
what we're even agreeing to.
But the unknowns, I don't understand, because they can't come back and charge us later because we're going to have title insurance once we close on the property. So we don't have any long-term liability there. If we do, then they can sue the title insurance. And then short-term, if we're going to move it to another city-owned property, we have, once again, the same liability there. So I just don't, Tal, this is probably more I'll listen to you on this. I mean, honestly, you should be talking more than anybody on this, probably, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I talked earlier with the law department before the meeting. My main concern was the insurance language and the indemnification clauses, and requested that they add additional insured language, because my concern was the trip and fall scenario where public facing, it looks like we own and we operate the center, right? So if there is a situation we get drug into a lawsuit, I would want to make sure that there is insurance coverage there, and that they're not coming to the city insurance first, that they're going to Central Connections insurance first. And if they don't have any money, indemnification, hold harmless, well, who's going to pay for the attorney's fees and court costs? There's no money there to indemnify or hold harmless. So putting the additional insured clause in there, I think, helps my comfort level there.
Well, so in my opinion, this is one of those things where I'm just not an expert at. So, Tal, I'll leave this up to you. We have great city attorneys, whatever.
And I do also appreciate, to the mayor's point about what exactly are we doing here?
Oh, I
We're
totally agree.
authorizing-
Yeah, she's not
I mean,
wrong.
we're authorizing the city manager to enter into this contract. We are not ourselves making this authorization. We are just authorizing him to sign the lease once this is finally prepared. So although we haven't had a chance to really dig into this and look at it more critically, I think that the authorization does allow us a little bit more time to take a look at it and see if there's anything else that we want to have changed before it's actually signed. And I don't know if we have till the end of the week before that is signed, or a few days, or maybe you can help
We're
us
gonna try
understand
to
how
get it
quickly
done
you want to
within the
sign
next
this and send
24
it
hours.
off. I mean, could we have, at least until the end of day tomorrow to take a look before if we authorize you, I'm saying, can we have a little bit of time to look at it before you sign the lease?
I mean, we'll do whatever you guys want. I think the quicker the better. So
Sure.
if you have a chance tonight or tomorrow morning to get, look at it, develop questions, thoughts, give Ben or I a call or Paul, and we can work through, changes. Because it'll have to go back and forth, right? So we would have to make the changes. We would send them over to Central Connections attorney, and then again, I think we've reached the big picture terms, but obviously, for example, the comments that Mr. Moon gave this afternoon were helpful, and his insight and expertise was helpful. So those are things we can incorporate. We didn't do it because I think those emails were about 3:45 or 4 as you guys were walking into the building today. So we weren't able to incorporate those because we had just gotten the draft and sent it off as quickly as we could. But yeah, I think if you can get in touch with us by early afternoon tomorrow, that'd be helpful.
So end of day tomorrow, we should be able to move forward on it
Yes.
if so
We're
authorized
hoping.
to do. Okay.
And I just got word that over 100 people per day are using the facility.
Okay, and do we know how many of those are the mission critical? I mean, I appreciate and definitely want
I'd
our
say the
seniors to continue
mission
doing yoga,
critical
but I
aspect
just,
of it is 25 to 30.
and I'm doing it looks like it's probably going to cost us about $15,000 to $20,000 a month in the end to operate it over the span of 4 months. Is that September, October? So,
But
60 to
we just said that we
80,000.
can close in 30 to 45 days.
But then Brody said it'd be hard by the end of the year even to get.
Well,
the,
he said we could wait that long, but I
Right.
don't understand why it would take that long to close.
The contract language says on or before.
So
As mutually agreed to is generally how that
So
reads.
the other, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
one thing we're looking at into is if it's we can use CDBG funds for this. We do have CDBG funds available, and we can use CDBG funds for this, but we can't do it until we have a lease signed.
Wow. Know that.
'Cause the issue we have, council, is that we've been out there in more of, I'll say, a UN peacekeeping mission phase, observing and looking at things. But we can't really start any operations unless we have some sort of legal foot in the door. That is what this lease vehicle is. That allows us then to let loose some of those CDBG funds so that we can get, for instance, utilities in the city's name during that interim. We can keep a couple key staff members out there as 1099 independent contractors. We can bring on volunteers and cover some of their soft costs or expenditures if they have a little mileage reimbursement or something like that. Until we have any of this legal framework, and we all collectively empathize, this is not a very great situation that we're being asked to deal with. But until we have this framework, we really can, and I think that's why the city manager is saying, is that really our option is, unless this thing gets kind of put together here in the next day or two, we have to step back at least temporarily from being there, because we are starting to incur potential liability by just hanging around. So I just want to make that point without being too strong in my language.
Did Mindy give you an indication of how much CDBG funds were
We're
available?
somewhere between, we're north of 75,000, so we feel confident that we have enough operationally with the staffing plan that Jackie and her group has initially worked through, that we have enough CV dollars in the CDBG pot to expend and cover us. But I think, as to Mr. Farrell's point and others, if this goes forward, it's the city's intention to close as quickly as is prudent. Obviously, this property has a lot of hair on it. We want to make sure that the city's hindquarters is covered, but at the end of the day, you know, we believe we have enough runway here that at a staff level, we have enough time to triage and assess things and better inform council so that you can then give us better direction on how you wish to proceed.
I guess I'll ask this too while we're on sort of the subject of the purchase contract. We had sort of said getting HVAC fixed and those types of things. Have we had any of those discussions yet?
I think they have occurred. They are not, obviously in this lease agreement specifically, and we
I realize we're not yet.
we haven't put together a purchase and sale agreement yet, because we're trying to move quickly on this.
One step at a time.
Yeah, I don't want to put cart before the horse.
So if that system were to go out while we have a lease on the building, we're responsible for repairing and maintaining that. Is that per paragraph 6?
Well, yeah, but we're gonna have to pick that up either way at the end of the day. I mean, it's just one of those things we gotta eat.
Well, maybe not. That was kind of the discussion before.
We would argue, Mayor, that would fall more under a capital improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think standard cleaning and maintenance, hey, there's a light bulb out, there's a furnace filter needing fixed or stain on the carpet, but something significant like that, say the boiler goes out, that would be more of a capital expenditure that's exempted under this draft language.
Okay. Great. Well, we obviously all care about our seniors and want the best for them. There's no question about that. So I hope no one thinks that that's the question on the docket today. Any other questions about this motion agenda item? Besides where Exhibit A might be. Could we maybe get the full?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I do have a
Please,
question.
You got more.
With this, is that old board gone?
I don't
No.
think this doesn't get into the operational side.
But I
of
mean,
it.
with us taking control, even with the lease, with the operations of it, the board's still intact?
Yes. Until we buy it, the
Until we
board
buy
is
it.
still
So
intact.
they're still there
but
even
it
through this
gives
lease.
us essentially control of the building. They want to step out as soon as they can, and essentially that's
We
their...
want them out.
Yes, and that's their intentions to do so. Once they get they're trying to get a better understanding financially where they're at.
Okay.
And they had some billing that they needed to do with the Council on Aging, so they will get some funds in there.
Okay. But we, as lease operators, we will oversee.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, I guess technically they have to stay in order to sell us the building.
They have to, but as far as
Yes.
operations,
Right,
deciding where and
operationally,
who
right.
and hiring and all that, they have nothing to do with that at this point.
No, matter of fact, they have laid off all of their employees with the exception of the 3 we're using and then the couple they still have using to do their billing and their accounting
Okay.
stuff.
So who's paying the employees?
We will pay the 3 employees that we keep to like run the front desk.
Will they be city employees?
No, they'll be
That's what Nathan's talking
1099
about,
contract.
1099.
Contractors, got it.
1099.
And who's signing this on behalf of Middletown Area Senior Centers, Senior Citizens Incorporated?
Who's signing it on behalf of?
Who signs this lease?
Says
For
the
them?
Board
President
president.
of the
For
board?
them will be Rick Fishball, their board president.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
Ready for the fun stuff?
Sure, thank you.
Just kidding. So we'll move to the legislation agenda tonight. Before we get started, I believe we have 3 first reading emergencies. So I would ask for a motion to waive the charter requirements requiring a second reading in the 30 days to enactment for items number 3, which is ordinance number O-2023-61, item number 4, ordinance number O-2023-62, and number 5, ordinance number O-2023-63.
And since you laid all those out so nicely, I'll just make a motion to approve.
Second?
Ms. Skank, you please call the roll?
Mr. Muterspaw,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Great. The first item tonight is ordinance number O-2023-60, an ordinance enacting and adopting the 2023 supplement S-15 to the codified ordinances of the city of Middletown, Ohio. This is a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Nothing further to add.
Any comments or questions from council? Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw.
Yes.
Next is resolution number R 2023-23, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, state of Ohio for the period ending December 31, 2023. This is for the Law Enforcement Trust Fund and the Law Enforcement Mandatory Drug Fine Fund. This is a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Anything?
Council, this supplemental appropriation is necessary to cover the cost you see below of $350,000 for the incurring of additional overtime in our jail and in our dispatch services due to staffing issues in both areas and to keep the level of staffing up to an acceptable amount. We've incurred more overtime than we had budgeted for.
Any comments or questions from council? Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Item 3 tonight is ordinance number O-2023-61, an ordinance amending the construction manager at risk agreement with Pepper Construction Company of Ohio, LLC, to accept the first guaranteed maximum price proposal for the City of Middletown Fire Services Headquarters and Satellite Stations project and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Wally?
Nathan?
Mayor, members of council, in front of you tonight is legislation that would award the first set of GMP, guaranteed maximum price packages for the 4 fire stations. The package in front of you right now has been bidded out by Pepper Construction, and based on their review and recommendation negotiations, this package contains all of the site work, site utilities, underground, grading, pad preparation, and also some stored equipment like backup generators and the like that have some very long lead times, so we need to go ahead and order those if we're to be operational when we desire. The price on these is just under $3 million, 2.997. The fire department and the fire chiefs kindly asking for your approval tonight so that site work can commence probably within the next 30 to 45 days on all 4 sites.
Any comments or questions from council? Okay, this is a first reading emergency, right? Okay.
It is.
Yes.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Item 4 tonight is ordinance number O-2023-62, an ordinance amending ordinance number O-2023-53, authorizing the purchase of Genesis extrication tools and accessories from Howe Rescue Systems for the Division of Fire and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Council, this is coming back to you to correct a mistake that we found from the July 5th. The $39,864 was erroneously left out as the amount of the grant, not $11,270. The amount of the grant was $39,864, and the budgeted amount in the fire department's budget was $11,270. So the total expenditure is still the same, $51,000 plus dollars.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
The next item is ordinance number O-2023-63, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with Don Franklin Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat for the purchase of 4 2023 Dodge Durango Pursuits for the Division of Police and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Council, this is a situation where the police chief has been trying for the better part of this year to find vehicles. Generally, they have Fords, and they have found 3 Dodge Durango police vehicles for purchase. And if it's an emergency, because if we don't act on this immediately, we lose them to somebody else who's ready to purchase them right away.
Can I ask a question about police driving in the city? I know we've had a few instances of excessive speeds at inappropriate times. I have recently seen a lot of police vehicles driving with no lights on, going 80, 90 miles an hour. Clearly, they're going somewhere to a call, I would imagine. Is there a requirement? And I always say this because I know we've had quite a few of them totaled. I'm worried more about the safety of citizens. They're going through 25-mile-an-hour zones, 80, 90 miles an hour, no lights at night. Is that okay? I don't know the
No,
rules
it's
and
not,
regulations
it's not
on
acceptable,
that.
and it is something the police chief has stated they are addressing in driver's training. And especially with recent events, it's something that, even with lights and sirens, it's unacceptable to go that fast.
Okay, I just know I've also heard from a lot of citizens. I've witnessed it, but I've heard a lot of people lately making additional comments about it. I don't think there's I hope there's not ill intent by our own police officers, but I just didn't know if that was a policy issue. Like, I don't know if they're going somewhere that if they're going to a specific type of a call, that they aren't required to. I just thought I'd get that question out there for people.
I don't want to,
I don't think Burke is here tonight.
Major Crank in the audience?
He'll work. We got a few of them.
Well, if you want to address, I don't want to speak out of turn. I know in the fire
You don't have to
department,
answer at the moment. I'm just
I
thinking
think
of it
there's
as I
certain
see-
calls, because of the nature of the call, that they do not go emergency Signal 5, red lights and siren.
Okay.
Just because it might be a burglary in progress or something like that, and therefore they kind of go stealth, for the lack of a better term. But once again, safety is always a priority, and like I said, even in emergency situations, red lights and sirens, you don't go 10 miles, 15 miles over the speed limit is the generally accepted practice in the fire division.
Okay, I don't need an official, I just wanted to kind of get a sense, is that, and I think just saying that we're addressing it is sufficient answer, so, yeah, thank you. Any comments or questions on the vehicle purchases? Okay, Ms. Kank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Item 6 is ordinance number O 2023-64, an ordinance authorizing an American Rescue Plan Act Infusion Grant Program Agreement with the Denny Lumber Company for the acceptance of American Rescue Plan Act funds as a provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue and declaring an emergency. This is, there's no action requested until September 5th, 2023.
Mr. Lawley?
Council, items 6 through 11 are the SBG ARPA infusion grants and or grant award recommendations. At the January ARPA Council work session, Council directed us to infuse $250,000 into the small business grant program. We had 26 applications, and these 6 are the first set of award recipients. So going forward, the review committee will be presenting additional recipients of the small business grant awards.
I was happy to see some new businesses come in, new as in new to applying, but some of them not new to the city by any means. So I'm glad we get a little bit more engagement from our small businesses, and I assume that's a testament to maybe how we've publicized them or communicated things. So thank you to city staff for that.
I think you see businesses from all over the city too, and not necessarily in one of our concentrated business districts in the city. They're really coming from all over.
Great. The next item is number 7, which is ordinance number O 2023-65, an ordinance authorizing an American Rescue Plan Act Infusion Grant Program Agreement with the Bearded Brewer, LLC, for the acceptance of American Rescue Plan Act funds as a provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue and declaring an emergency. And again, no action is requested until the next meeting, September 5, 2023.
I think I can
Plow through these?
Yeah, if you want to just go ahead and
Yep,
read all these,
that
unless there's
works.
any additional.
Number 8 is ordinance number O 2023-66, an ordinance authorizing an American Rescue Plan Act Infusion Grant Program Agreement with Combs Veterinary Services LLC for the acceptance of American Rescue Plan Act funds as a provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue and declaring an emergency. No action requested until September 5. Item 9, ordinance number O 2023-67, an ordinance authorizing an American Rescue Plan Act Infusion Grant Program Agreement with Repper Pagan Law Limited for the acceptance of American Rescue Plan Act funds as a provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue and declaring an emergency. No action requested until September 5. Number 10, ordinance number O 2023-68, an ordinance authorizing an American Rescue Plan Act Infusion Grant Program Agreement with Techie Brothers LLC for the acceptance of American Rescue Plan Act funds as a provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue and declaring an emergency. No action requested until September 5. And then number 11 is ordinance number O 2023-69, an ordinance authorizing an American Rescue Plan Act Infusion Grant Program Agreement with New Ales Brewing LLC for the acceptance of American Rescue Plan Act funds as a provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue and declaring an emergency. And again, no action requested until September 5th, 2023. So we'll move on then to the next one, number 12, which is ordinance number O 2023-70, an ordinance accepting the annexation of 93.429 plus or minus acres of territory located in Lemon Township Butler County, Ohio, as required by Section 709.04 of the Ohio Revised Code. This is a first reading.
Council, this is memorializing your ordinance of May and actually accepting the 93 acres of land into Middletown from Lemon Township.
Thank you to Mr. Cahall for sending the GIS overhead. That helped me a lot to put a little perspective on it. I was struggling with the stick lines, and thank you. Any comments or questions on this one?
Item 13 tonight is ordinance number O-2023-71, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to apply for, accept, and enter into a water supply revolving loan account agreement with the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency's Department of Environmental and Financial Assistance for the 18th Avenue Water Main Replacement Project. This is a first reading.
Council, this piece of legislation is to apply for and accept and enter into an agreement for the water supply revolving loan account from the Ohio EPA. This is for the construction of the 18th Avenue water main replacement at a cost of $1.2 million. The water main has experienced multiple breaks and failures with the remaining pipe in extremely poor condition. This project is currently out to bid. Those bids are due by August 31st of 2023. This loan is for 2.63%, which you can understand is a low rate, which we want to take advantage of and lock in now. The Water Capital Fund will serve as the dedicated repayment source for this loan.
And then our final legislative item tonight is number 14, resolution number R-2023-24, a resolution authorizing the filing of applications for state fiscal year 2025 with the Ohio Department of Transportation for grants under the Ohio Public Transportation Grant Program. This is a first reading.
Council, this is essentially our yearly annual housekeeping item that allows the Butler County RTA to apply for grants with the Ohio Department of Transportation.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to, unless there's questions on that one. Okay, that brings us to new business. Do we have any new business items that anyone wants to raise this evening? I had a just quick request, not that it has to be in this moment, just that we get some sort of an update on the infill lot program. I had multiple builders just happen to run into them and reach out to me saying, hey, we've really wanted to build on these infill lots and have heard for a little bit too long almost that like we don't have the program in place yet. I know we've been working on it. I just don't know. Maybe we don't need to, you don't need to impromptu. Just maybe if there could be maybe an email sent out to council with an update on it.
Ever, are you comfortable addressing it now, or do you want to just do it by email? I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's up to you. I mean, she's...
Whatever you'd like, Deborah. I'm not pushing either way. I just, it was just a request for some sort of update on it so I can
Glad I
respond.
could prep you for this question.
That's all right. I had actually received an email from Councilman Farrell about it.
Could you move the mic a little closer?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
As council remembers, we did get direction to change our side lot program to carve out any lots that would be able to be developed with infill housing. So we have done that. The program update is live, and we have been responding to any letter of interest that we receive asking about infill lots. Economic Development and our city planner, James Metz, have been working together to get a comprehensive list designated by either commercial or residential of the buildable lots that the city owns in town. My understanding is that should be completed and ready for dissemination by the end of business on Wednesday, as long as there aren't any snags or issues that we need to fix. I will say we received letters of interest on a pretty constant basis with people wanting to know about how to get a hold of a city lot for either expansion of their yard or infill construction. Based on council's direction and in concert with the city manager, we have been working on an infill program where they are going to be required to enter into a development agreement to actually build a single family home with a timetable and deadlines that have to be met. with a reverter clause so that that property will come back to the city if those agreement deadlines aren't met, and the house isn't built. I will say that to date, the letters that we've received, that we have sent that response out, we're very interested in seeing a single-family home. We would love to enter into an agreement. We have not received we've not received a letter from anyone who has reached back out and said, yes, I absolutely am ready to enter into an agreement and build a house right now. So I think some of what we're getting is people who are interested in building a house, but not necessarily, say, in the next year. So we are happy to continue working with economic development. I know we've been working with the city manager's office on the potential ability to market some of these lots, either in groups or by themselves. But on a case-by-case basis, we deal with the public all the time, and we answer any letters of interest that come in, but just so far, we haven't had anybody that actually wanted to enter into an agreement to build a house right now.
Is it possible to send maybe a link to whatever it is that you want them to fill out? That way, if I hear from someone else again, I can just send
Yeah,
them.
absolutely. We'll be more than happy to send that.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Any other new business? That was not coordinated. I had no idea you asked about that.
Yeah, it's pretty ironic.
I actually had someone just ask about that at the park board meeting last night, so that follows up on that for me as well.
On the bright side, the cost of the building has went down. Perfect time.
Okay, well, with that, we have a request to move to executive session under the authority of ORC 121.22G2 to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or for the sale of property. A competitive bidding if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage. I hear we have multiple reasons to move to that this evening for a lot of different topics. So do we have a motion to move to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Mr. Farrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw.
Yes.
And do we have any expectation of anything occurring following executive session that is worth noting? I see shaking. Okay. So we will likely just come back only to close the meeting back out. When is our next meeting? Ooh, we got 3 weeks off, huh? September 5th, 5:30 p.m. here in council chambers. Until then, blue skies over Middletown.